Hey guys, Jordan and D here for Hashtag Survival, and we are here with episode 9 of our little podcast. Today we're going to talk about Le Combat, or combat, I suppose, if you'd like to call it so.
just some random French in there. Why not?
It's pretty much the only French I know.
Is putting
That
la
in
in
oui
front of
oui.
things.
Yep. That's also kind of how I do my Spanish. So
I speak the French.
I speak Le French and El Español.
Amazing.
Now
Very
we will discuss
talented.
El Combat. Listen, despite being half Puerto Rican, my Spanish skills are pretty much on par with like what's her name? Peggy. What is her name from fucking King of the Hill?
Oh, yeah. Peggy's the wife, yeah. Or
Yeah,
Peg or whatever.
pretty much on par with hers.
Fair enough. That's
Just to
okay.
say,
I'm mostly Italian, and I remember Pantaloni, and Il Gatto is the cat. So and La Fruta is the fruit. So there you go. That's I speak some Italian. Why not?
the only thing I can do in Italian is curse. So it's really all I need to do too. So combat.
Yeah.
What is your, and I'm sure D's portion by just being like more guns, bigger guns, 7 guns in each hand.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I do love guns, and I love collecting guns in games where I can do that and showing them off on like gun racks and shit. But like, I love melee combat too. Like, there are some games where I go full melee mostly. Um, I just like cool looking weapons. Like, if it's a cool looking knife or a cool looking sword or a cool looking gun, like, I'm gonna be in love with it, and I'm gonna want to kill lots of zombies or bandits or whatever is attacking me with it.
That's fair. I think my thing is I'm less concerned with what it looks like, and I just get very, and I think it's because my weapon of choice is the bow. Never the crossbow, always the bow. And I think I'm really just concerned about like just the logistics of my weapon. Like, what's the reload speed? How far can I shoot? How effective am I at range? What types of arrows can I use? Fire arrows were really good in the forest. They were incredibly helpful in
Oh man, those
Dying
were
Light.
great.
Anything like that. Anything where it's really like something different. But the guns, it's kind of like I only like and appreciate using the gun in game if it's either a game where that's pretty much all you have because they've weighted the combat against the melee, like the melee is like the starter thing, or where it's some kind of creepy horror shit and I'm going to be in close quarters with them, and that's so that I can just, ram it down their throats when they get too close for my bow to be effective.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not only about how cool it looks to me. Like that's a big, part to me. Like if I find a gun that looks cool, like like for example the cool golden deagles that I have in my excellent profile picture on the website. um like I'll instantly be like, ooh, I have to use these. um but I also like I do have preferences like based on how they work. Like I tend to like faster weapons. If I'm using a melee weapon, I'd rather be able to swing fast. There is something satisfying about swinging like a big old sledgehammer and just taking out a dude's head, but for the most part, I prefer to be able to do fast swings, to have a little more control over the speed at which I'm doing things, and also to be able to like dodge and weave and all that. And for guns, kind of the same thing. I like things that shoot pretty quickly. I'm actually not a huge fan of like sniper rifles or like bolt action rifles, anything that kind of shoots one at a time and then you gotta reload, except for shotguns. I love shotguns because how can you not? They're so satisfying.
Yeah, and I feel like this is why we tend to 2-man most games, back with a bow, and so you provide that distance I need from getting overwhelmed, or you'll do things like close quarter work with a shotgun, and I'm more in the back with something precision, a sniper rifle for those headshots to pull down something like somebody with a bomb or whatever the case may be. And I think it complements well and it's really well, and I think it's also a super stupendous way to sidestep into the types of weapons that you might see in a survival game. More often than not, in a lot of the survival craft games, it ends up being where you have, like, you can make a knife or a hatchet or like a pickaxe, and then some of them you're using that as your, like, your starter weapon, but they're not really intended to be weapons. They're just kind of the first thing you have access to.
Sure, yeah, but you can kind of use them as sort of like backup weapons if you need them. Some games sort of treat the knife in the same way, like you can make a little starter knife, a little like stone knife, or uh, I think you can actually make like a stick knife in the forest if I remember right. But it's some games treat it as like the earliest starter melee weapon along with like a spear, and other games intend it to be a tool, but you could still use it to stab things, as I do typically. But yeah, a lot of like the sort of the early weapons also sort of end up doubling as tools, and they're effective for what they are. But yeah, gotta get some nicer stuff. And some games, like most games, will have a bow. I've noticed most games will allow you to make some sort of bow. Not every game has a crossbow, though. I don't think.
No, I mean, I feel like there's an element of just the technique necessary to make it. It is just, I think, a little bit beyond just pulling together a basic bow. Even if you YouTube like basic bowers or making a bow in a bushcraft survival scenario, you can see people doing that, but I don't ever see them being like, and now I made this crossbow. Ta-da!
Yeah, I guess more complicated, more pieces and such. Got to go into it.
Yeah, there's just a little more into it. But I think the thing that bugs me about the ones where you can make like the basic stone knife, then anything that goes sideways from that, so like making the first pickaxe or game, but then they don't let you use it on any of the AI. It can only hit rocks magically.
Trying to think of what games don't let you use them on zombies, because I think I've definitely in a panic state have swung at zombies with like a pickaxe or whatever. An axe, I mean, axe kind of doubles anyway as like a weapon and tool, but I've definitely like panic swung at zombies using a pickaxe, and I can't remember a time when it didn't work. Like, I mean, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but it still does some.
That's definitely a plinking,
Yeah,
plinking down. But I mean, typically you're seeing, the knife, the hatchet, which is usually a double up weapon as a tool, spear, bow. These are like your first tier, like handcraft.
yeah,
And I think you're seeing a lot of ones where you're reusing the same ingredients. This is where we get a lot of people who are like, oh, it's exactly like the forest, or it's exactly like Green Hell. You're usually starting these people off with some type of cordage,
yeah,
rocks, and sticks. Like, there's only so much shit you're going to get from that. You're not like,
sure.
and now you do those, what is it? Like doing the balloons at the children's birthday party, and you're
Oh
like,
yeah,
and look,
yeah.
now it's an M16. It's, I'm just
Just
that good.
MacGyver it.
Yeah. You thought it was going to be a stick axe, but no, it's not. Now I have this actual like tiny pebble, and now it's completely a shotgun. I'm that cool.
Oh, if only.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that they try to put in that at the end of the day, you also do see a lot of assets reused, where you can look at the same pickaxe and the same axe and the same knife from game to game to game. So I know for some of the early access games and some of the up and coming games, they'll have like these asset channels where they're trying to make their own variations of them, just because we've all seen kind of the same look. I think though, after that beginning tier is where you start seeing, depending on the game, it'll either go directly into guns or it'll go into some kind of like midland crap tier. A really good example would be the new pipe gun tier for
Oh God.
Days.
Ugh.
I
Just skip
fucking
it. Just skip it, guys. Trust me. It's not worth it.
like open a box. There's a level 7, but I don't care. Just if it's pipe anything,
I
throw it
don't
away.
I don't want it. I mean, I'll to be fair, it'll help you in a pinch, and it's certainly an upgrade from just having a bone knife that you flail around, but they're really not that good. And in 7 days at least, you're gonna progress fast enough that I feel like you can probably just skip that tier altogether.
Yeah, just having to wait for them to load.
Oh
No,
God. Yeah, I hope you have 10
no.
seconds to not get smashed in the face by many zombies. If not, you're probably screwed.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that kind of like, maybe it doesn't have a lot of distance, or it has the distance, but it doesn't have much force, or it's got a really tiny magazine. or even if they don't have them necessarily on a tier thing, usually you might find certain ones like available. You might in Scum and in DayZ, you'll find what was the one we would always find in DayZ? I know in Scum it's the hunter
Uh,
rifle,
yeah, it was something similar, but like some sort of like little hunting rifle that fires what was it, 22 ammo. So like the really tiny, weak ammo that really didn't do much at all, just kind of plinked things.
and the Scorpion.
And the Scorpion was okay. Scorpion was okay for what it was.
But the weapons are a really interesting thing because unless you're talking about certain types of games, so you have the eternal deep pockets of the forest, or you have 7 days where all you have to do is make room for your chainsaw and your Gatling gun and your flamethrower next to you. These are not actual things, I'm just saying, but you can put anything in your pocket. But for a lot of games, the weapons tie in really closely to inventory. Bigger weapons, you see it in DayZ and Scum especially. These rifles, these bows, they're very big. They don't fit in most bags. They might only fit behind a bag, and you only have two shoulders. Like those are your points for where you can put things. So if you want to do two rifles and then you had a shovel, or you're trying to carry a bow and two rifles, or whatever the case may be, like you're having to make decisions. So it ends up being not worth it, where it is an inefficient gun or one that's in condition or one that doesn't have the power, the stopping power. It becomes this kind of thing where it's another level of inventory, is really judging which weapons you can carry with you if they're worth, that space.
Sure. Yeah, I mean like anything, you have to decide what is worth the space and what is worth carrying and what is worth leaving behind. So, yeah, it when you have a big range of weapons like in DayZ, I think DayZ is the one I can think of that has the most just guns all over the place. I guess Scum 2 has a good amount, but in DayZ they just like keep adding more like every patch. And you have to kind of, you have to really decide and make these choices based on your preference and based on what you need it for and sort of how common the ammo is and stuff like that.
Yeah, playstyle is definitely something that works really well. I mean, you see me all the time, like
Yeah.
holding out for a bow, holding a shoulder open for a bow. And I think depending on the game and depending on the loot rules of your server, there's a level of scarcity that goes into, right? Like there have been games that on servers where we come across like the most broken, shitty pea shooter, and we're like, oh my god, it's a gun that other people didn't take. Quick, take it, cradle it to our bosom.
That was definitely us when we first started DayZ. It was like, oh my god, a gun, and we would pick up like every gun, even if it was crappy, and we'd try to make room for guns. And then we kind of realized eventually that like one, we kept picking up the crappy gun that wouldn't have really done much for us anyway, and two, like the gun isn't much use if you aren't finding the ammo for it, so it ended up just being a waste of space.
And not only that, but depending on the game, and whether it's PvP for balance or just a game with guns, but you're avoiding it into just like um, a run and gun shooter. There's also the aspect of, for guns, especially like the noise factor. More and more games putting that in, especially when you're paired with zombies, which was last week's topic of enemies. That you fire the gun, you make the noise, they come. Like, we frequently will clear homes and things and towns and Scum by just finding a nice, good house to sit in and popping a gun once or twice.
And then the
And
entire town is outside our window.
yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where it's like if you're a solo player and you're trying to survive and maybe you're not that comfortable with the combat, maybe you're not that good at the combat, and you might just not choose to pick up any guns because why bring them all to you? Maybe you do prefer the axe and just the close quarter, quiet weapons.
Sure. Yeah, of course. It also highly depends on your playstyle. If you would rather sort of stay, if you want to be like in the fray and right in the middle of everything, then it matters less. But if you want to kind of be picking things off and you want to sort of take it like one at a time slowly, then yeah, you're gonna want obviously maybe not the loudest weapon. Maybe you're better off then with the small weapon with the dinky ammo because it's less loud and it will draw less zombies to you.
Yeah, it won't kill them, but at least
It
draw
won't
less.
kill
But
them, yeah, but yeah, it's a start.
it's true. I mean that kind of goes into the ever changing, and I'll throw in some parameters on this. So we're talking about games, we're talking about survival games, we're talking about the integration within survival games. But I think the next logical step would be, well, are guns bad in this very confined space that I just outlined? And do they have a home in things? And I would say, for me, it is really dependent on the title. When it's a
Mhm.
title that's really like, you chose to go into wilderness, you wanted to get away from civilization, you are someone who barely knows how to put up a tent, and you couldn't even pass woodshop class back in middle school, and then you're going around, you're making these little dinky knives and shit, and then what, like, you're like, and I can also make M16s, and I can also make solar panels, and like, I really feel like it has to fit, right? So if it's going to be a game all about the nature and it's peaceful and it's about relaxing, and I don't think you probably need a gun in that scenario. Whereas you're going more for like every third night, 720 zombies come. I'd kind of be like, well, where is my gun?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure people are tired of hearing me say this, but I agree. It definitely depends on the game because it depends not only on the sort of like the feel or the atmosphere of the game, but also on on the setting where you are. Like if you're in the middle of a jungle, like because you're playing Crash, so you went down and you're stuck in the middle of the jungle, you're probably not going to be finding or making M5s. Like that doesn't seem like a thing that logically makes sense. But like for example, Scum, if you are a prisoner who has been put on this prison island and you are there to entertain people and they want you to be killing each other and fighting, then yeah, there's probably going to be guns sprinkled around to make things more interesting. So it makes sense that you might go into a house and find a gun.
No, I think it ends up being one of those things where it could really just break or make the game. And that's even just talking about the gun from a player perspective, right? Just from something we're enjoying or not enjoying, because there's all sorts of shit in the back end about that. The balance, are things going to become bullet sponges? Like, how much ammo will you have? Will people get too reliant on it? And then how is it going to balance with different types of enemies and all? So it ends up being one of those things where you can kind of go off the deep end in talking about it. But I think it's a really good point into bringing us to the next thing, which is this episode is about combat. And so, where is the line on combat? Is it just engaged in combat? Is it, if there's not some kind of AI human type component, like something you're fighting against hunters, prisoners, you're fighting against robots, whatever? If it's just animals, TLD style, you're getting jumped by a wolf or a bear, is it really just kind of a more realistic bushcraft survival game where some have to defend yourself? Because oftentimes you'll see the keyboard warriors, the armchair lawyers try to argue, no guns, or no guns for certain purposes, and then they'll be very, well, it's not combat, it's hunting. It's completely different. You said no guns for combat.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of it can be difficult, I suppose, to see where the line is because if you were to say that like let's say we were to make the claim that combat is only when like you initiate it or whatever and the enemy fights back. Like that's still like hunting would still fall in that, right? Because like if you go, well, maybe not, depends on what you're hunting. Like most of the time, if you shoot at a deer, they run away. But like if you go out and you shoot at a bear or a wolf, they're gonna attack you and you're gonna be fighting it. So then has hunting now become combat? Or is it still hunting because you were going after an animal and not like, a zombie or another human AI? it is sort of like, is hunting a part of combat? Like, is it a type of combat? Like, it is a little. It seems like it could become a very hard argument to find a solution to.
I think people really get into it when you're trying to list the attributes of a game, and you'll say something like, "Oh, it has fishing, and it has camping, and it has hunting." And then they take a shot at a deer, it dies, fine, they're hunting. They take a shot at a wolf, it doesn't kill them in one hot hit, or they miss, and the wolf comes, pounds them in the ground. And now it's like, oh, well, I thought this was a low key survival game. Like, I didn't think there was combat. So there's always that like weird line where people get, I guess tripped up in it. Unless you're playing Icarus, in which case you could literally just headshot everything. Because I drop bears and wolves all day, every day with bows.
Yeah, it's a little nuts, and from really ridiculous distances too. One of these days we'll have to put together a video of some of your crazy shots.
It's very fun, but it's one of those weird things where it's just kind of like a weird thing to talk about. So for the types of combat, and I think definitely in a lot of games that we've been playing, a lot of these zombie games or any of the games that have that PvP aspect, Daisy, Scum, things like that, you get a lot of they have the whole gamut of combat, right? So you're fighting AI, you're fighting, well, if you play it on a public server, which we don't, you'd be fighting other people. There's all sorts of melee. They actually do have, in Scum especially, that duck and weave, barehanded brawl. You can do an array of weapons. I mean, if it's in your hand, you can probably attempt to slug somebody with it.
Absolutely, 100%.
I
have
everything.
Yes,
everything in the game. But
you gotta check what works as the best weapon, and gotta find the best improvised weapon.
I think there's also the ones where it's intended for more of a pacing thing. Things like an Icarus with the tree, and you're scaling up with what you can build, right? So you start off with that really low level shit, and guns or anything like that is locked. What was it, like tier 3?
Tier 3, and I think you had to be level 25 to make them.
Yeah, I think you're right. But even then, it's not just like, 25, gunpowder, get all these, different types of ores and the basically the crafting table type items that you need to make the ore, and then
get the better smelter.
Shit together. Yeah, get the better smelter. Find out that you need like X amount of things per one bullet, and then only have enough to make like 3 bullets, which is really nothing. Try to shoot a polar bear in the face, have no more bullets.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Accidentally shoot off your gun and draw the polar bear to you. Very fun.
You fucker, you got me killed.
It was an accident. It was 100% an accident.
Mm-hmm. You don't get to have guns anymore.
Well, then who's gonna shoot the zombies that are swarming you?
I think there's a couple of them, though, that kind of lock the idea of like a tier system. You have the going from the pipe guns to the higher guns that you can get in 7 days. Subsistence is again with making the part, and then it works from there. And so they don't just drop you in and they're like, here you go. Just go blow the shit out of everybody.
Sure. Yeah, in most survival games, you gotta build up to it. And I mean, some games you get them faster than others, but it's not like it's not like an FPS. It's not like Doom. You get dropped in, you go into the next room and there's a shotgun, and next level you get a rocket launcher, and then you're carrying 6 guns, and yeah, it's not like that. In most survival games, you got to either build up to it or you got to sort of progress until you get to the point where you'll find them.
The only one that's actually, just looking through the list of the games we've played recently, so like Survive of the Night, I mean, we've been getting so many guns.
That's true.
Like, acres of guns. But you really don't get that much ammo for your gun.
Yeah, you go through it pretty quickly, and honestly, like, I didn't like that pistol I had. I wish I could remember what kind it was, but I don't. But the only gun that's felt really worthwhile to me is the shotgun. Even though, like, we're finding all these other guns and stuff, like, I keep just wanting to go back to the shotgun.
It almost feels like the only one that's turning in a consistent performance. But maybe it's because we're not really firing them during the day to avoid drawing them. We're doing it at night.
Yeah.
Probably a certain amount of like human error and missing whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure it's human error. Like, a huge portion of it is human error. Absolutely.
Yeah, the aiming feels like a little weird. I'm sure it's something we get used to, but it is interesting that is one of the ones where they do in fact kind of throw I mean, because I think I've gone into a gun store and there's been like 6 guns on the floor.
Yes, yeah. There was that one time we went into the gun store and we each were able to get like two of every gun that we found in there. It's pretty nuts.
But also the durability goes down really quickly, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
in a lot of games, they'll do that where, yeah, you have it, but maybe you're on Daisy, like maybe you're only going to be firing it for a bit. And unless you have some kind of repair kit or something, like there goes your gun. Hope you weren't too reliant on that for your safe being.
Yep. Hope you can find another one.
Ends up being this really interesting, like when in the absence of repair kit, it ends up putting you in this really weird situation where it kind of becomes like a last resort. Like I'll go and fist fight the zombie until I feel like maybe I might die, and then I'll pull it out really quick. But I don't want to
Yeah.
rely on it, where I'm just worried that I'm going to lose it. And then there's like that security of having it,
Yeah,
having your one
absolutely.
gun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think there's also just there's games where they not only do they not make sense, but the creators haven't put them in either. So like Green Hell, like does not need
Yeah,
gun.
no, no. Like I said, there's really it wouldn't really make much sense. Like you're dropped in the the Amazon, the middle of, a jungle. You're surrounded by tribal folks and none of them have guns, and so where would you find a gun and why would you have a gun, So it really, yeah, there's really no need to add them or for them to be there. I mean, even in the forest, if I remember right, like you don't ever find a gun unless you do that sort of the side quest with the pictures and digging up the pieces, and then you get the like flintlock pistol, which I don't think we ever finished doing that. I don't remember, but yeah, like sort of same deal, with that. And can you imagine how ridiculous it would be if they threw guns in the long dark? Like, what? It would be
Well, the Long
ridiculous,
Dark, you
right?
do have guns, but you don't have access to them in Interloper. It's actually
Oh, okay,
based
you
on
don't have them in Loper. Okay.
yeah, it's actually there's actually difficulty. I was actually going to bring up when you were mentioning making guns to go off the Long Dark for 2 seconds. Like Stranded Deep is another one where like they
Right.
really stuck to that idea of like you're a dude in business casual who like went down on a plane crash and now you only have basically what you have or like what you're scrounging. Because I think the most gun like thing you were able to make in there was like the spear gun, the super ghetto one, and then you got the the carbon spear gun, which
Right.
was in like the starting crate. But other than that, like you had your pick and your fish spear and your machete thing and your refined spear and stuff, but it was mostly about like using the bow and poking shit with the fish spear or like
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
spear. But I honestly liked it. Like at least things made sense and they fit like the motif, the idea.
Yeah, it fit the setting and the feel of the game.
I think in terms of that though, it is really cool when they do make it that it is coming like for Stranded Deep, it is coming from the environment. For Green Hell, it is coming from the environment. Anything that you're doing is just stuff you have around. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, I have this what is it? Like a like in some of them it's like parts and it looks like a tiny thing of wire. And it's like with this and also a bottle and a rock. Now I have a shotgun.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? That's all you need to make a shotgun.
Yeah. I like to keep it real. But no, you actually do have a bolt action hunting rifle in the Long Dark. And
Okay.
I still like part of me is just I don't play story games, so I haven't done it. And part of me is just kind of almost waiting for all of the 5 episodes to be out before I do it. So some things are in the story mode that aren't in the survival where they play differently. And so I wouldn't know for story mode if there's any difference in it.
Right. Well,
But
I mean, even if they do have like maybe like a pistol or like you said, a hunting rifle, bolt action hunting rifle, like that's something very different than dropping like AKs and M4s and MP5s on you. Like it's a different feel too. Like at least like a bolt action hunting rifle is something that maybe if you were going out into the wilderness you would think to bring with you, if you had it. Sort of be like, I'll need this for hunting and protection.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I played. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the game. It's my favorite game. I've been working on a tattoo idea for the axe for the symbol of the game,
Oh
but
yeah.
I haven't played in since even before COVID. Like, I've been playing and streaming it for like a year straight, and I burned myself out. And then between COVID, the changes to my work schedule and doing the 12-hour days every day and everything else, I just started working on other games, so I haven't gone back. But I plan on doing a playthrough, and I'm really excited about the dev diary, about them actually doing the behind the scene works to split the story and the survival mode basically apart, so they're no longer dependent on each other in the code level. And going forward, they're going to be doing paid DLC for it, and I'm so stoked. I can't wait to play again, etc., etc.
It's
They
pretty
did
rad.
make it. It's going to be great, but they do have the hunting rifle, which is really useful for obviously hunting or protection. And they had included the revolver, which was more of like a loud, snappy, like short distance piece, but it would scare away some of the animals.
Oh, I love
And then
revolvers. Love them.
after I had stopped playing, they had added gunsmithing in the sense of being able to make ammunition, because there are people in the game who are playing long games. Oh, I played for like 1,000, 2,000, 3 days games, like one save, and
Damn.
you'd be out of bullets, obviously. So
Obviously, yeah, for sure.
yeah, so they actually added in the gunsmithing, and that came in, like I said, after I had stopped playing. But it was very, like, in true long dark fashion, it was very intricate. It wasn't just like, oh well, now you can just craft. Can you not craft bullets? I can craft bullets. Is that not like what they teach you in home economics? Bullet crafting.
I mean, I
So
was
like
gonna
you had to.
say. Sorry, go ahead. Continue. Yeah, continue the
Oh, I was
thought.
just gonna say it was really like it was really intricate. You had to get the casing. Usually, like you would find it as loot, or you would pick it off after you fire it, and then you would have to combine that with gunpowder, which you had to make from stump remover, dusting sulfur, charcoal, and then you'd have to combine that with a bullet, which you would make from scrap lead, which you harvested from car batteries. So like it was an
Wow.
actual, like, I'm not saying like 100% realism. I have no idea how you make bullets. This seems just as plausible to me as anything else, as finding them under a cabbage patch.
Yeah,
But
anything that you told me, I would probably believe. So.
right. But I mean, at least it was better than just like, you know, I had a rock, add some charcoal and dust and a fair clap 3 times, and now I have 16 mags of bullets.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the thought that I was gonna say then was sort of like, what do you think then about like, the realism of, being able to craft bullets, in terms of depending on like who the hell you are. Like, are you just a dude that was dropped in here? I think for the most part, unless you're like you are a weaponsmith, your character is a weaponsmith in the game or something. Most people probably don't know how to make ammunition, right? Unless it's either their hobby or their craft or whatever. So like obviously it's maybe not realistic that you can ever craft ammo or guns or anything, in a game, but what do you think of, like, do you think that that should matter? Is that like one of those things that is under, okay, we get that it's not realistic, but we need it for game mechanic purposes?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where you kind of have to just like give a little. And I think there's a bunch of shit that is like that. Like, there's so much about, like, there's so many people where if you killed an animal, they would immediately say, start to butcher it the wrong way and potentially puncture something like the intestines or the stomach and ruin the meat. Or they would not know how to take care of their clothes. Or, I mean, right now, we went to school, I think, back during the time when home economics was like actually a thing. Like, how many people now, when your clothing is starting to fall away in this situation, who the fuck knows how to sew? Like, who is, you're all gonna be running around naked because ain't nobody know how to make any fucking pants. So like, I think the gunsmithing or the ammo crafting, or I mean, who knows how to
Yeah,
fucking make a knife? At
absolutely.
least was it Forrest that kind of did like the little baby nod to it, like you're kind of a dude who knows survival, so
Yeah, so they sort of tried to explain like why your guy can do these things is because like he is a famous survival expert or some whatever nonsense it was. So yeah, they kind of tried to be like, oh well, here's why you can do these things. Don't question it. But I agree with you that like you kind of just if you didn't include these things, like you wouldn't have a game, right? So like it's going all the way back to the discussion of realism that we had long, long ago in the early days of the podcast. You gotta have some give. You gotta give the benefit of the doubt. You gotta be like, hey, it's okay that maybe a random dude who's playing Crash in the middle of the forest wouldn't know how to do these things, but like, okay, I guess you just want to run around with a stick forever. Like that doesn't sound like very engaging, fun gameplay.
no, not at all. And I think it's one of those things where you kind of just have to agree to believe the believing spirit. But I think there's a lot that goes into just the combat in general that even if it's something really small, like Long Dark, doesn't really have super varied combat. Like you were trying to stay alive. You were always in defensive mode unless you were hunting a deer or something. In which case, it's really truly hunting. Now, you can argue that some people are in more of an aggressive mode if they're actually going around doing a challenge. They're trying to kill a bunch of wolves. They have some weird hatred of wolves, whatever the case may be. But, permadeath game. It's not just, well, I'll just fucking hit this bear, and if he kills me, whatever, I'll wake up on my bed. I'll just, perma sprint back to my shit that fell. Long Dark Permadeath don't care if you got 20 minutes in the game. They don't care if the save, like, it gives no shits. If you fuck up, if you think you had enough ammo, or if whatever happens, you miss him not paying attention, or whatever the case may be, there's a lot that goes into the combat for these things, and there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of just understanding how each game, like the way you interact with things in a combat-y, aggressive fashion, can really set it, can really set the tone. Like, yeah, you do have the revolver potentially, depending on the game mode, and you do have I think it's the hunting rifle. God, like I said, I haven't played in so long, so I can't speak as an authority on this. One of them you couldn't get an interloper, or maybe it was both, you couldn't get an interloper. But like as you go through the settings, you might have no access to it at all. So now you're completely relying on the bow, or you might be saving the revolver ammo for like a setting where you maybe feel like you're getting, gang banged by wolves and you really need some kind of backup. Or maybe you're saving the rifle bullets for only shooting at moose so they don't get close and beat the shit out of your ribcage. Like, that putting that into that scenario is a lot different than just being in 7 days and just being like, oh, I can carry, every single type of gun and all the ammo I want.
Sure. And it's like it's an entirely different approach to combat, right? Cause so like you said, in The Long Dark, it's more about you're usually unless you're doing some sort of challenge or whatever, you're usually on the defensive side, right? Like you're not going out seeking combat, but combat may come to you and then you have to defend yourself. Whereas in games like well, for example, 7 Days to Die, like you're sort of I think they expect that you're going to be in combat most of the time. Like you're running around cutting zombies heads off and dealing with the hordes and the blood moons and like they combat the sort of fast-paced nature of the combat is a lot more expected of you and intended in 7 days. And then you have sort of like middling things like I would say Daisy or Scum where they intend for you to be in combat, but I think they also intend you to not be too overzealous with it because if you can get swarmed very quickly and if you do then you're probably dead.
Yeah, I think there are attempts made in at the very least the zombie games. The PvP games, they come with their own built-in, like like a curbing situation. Like if you're
Yeah.
popping off at night, shooting zombies or shit and everything's really quiet, like people will come for you and find you and kill you.
Sure, yeah, they're gonna find you real easy, and then they're gonna take your nice gun.
Yeah. So I mean that's a built-in way to make it so it's not you just running around and stuff. And I think combat is a really, combat is one of those things in survival games, along with things like injury, like an injury system or food, nutrition, that kind of stuff. It's one of those ways where you can kind of put this little checklist up and you can look at it and you can really gauge just how survivally it is. If it's like, why, yes, you can carry 17 guns and you never miss and your gun never gets jammed or whatever, and you can just one shot everything, like it starts to slide down. Like maybe more of like a survival horror when it's just more about stay alive, as opposed to more like you're struggling to be alive with whatever tools, weapons, or otherwise that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think for the most part, the more that a game skews towards combat, it's going to be a little less skewing towards the more difficult, bushcrafty survival sort of things. And that may be a generalization, but that sort of seems to me a fair way to measure it.
I think there's a lot of games where it's changing all the time, right? So looking at, for example, because I was in their Discord earlier this morning, like one of the upcoming days games, Forever Skies, and the protagonist, the player character, who they call the lone scientist, and they've done. It's one of those things where like it's a bigger team, so like to one person potentially in the Discord, and then you get an interview that you see from the second person, and then another interview from the third person, and so like even though you're trying to convey, like the three of you think you're conveying the same thought, the way you phrase it can kind of give people a different idea of things. But one of the things they've been really was this idea of like the game wasn't going to be like a heavy combat game. Like it was really around light combat. You're not a hero, you're not a soldier, like you're a scientist. If there's another way for you to get out of a situation, you might be more inclined to do that. So a lot of people were comparing it to something like Subnautica, where it's more about, that idea of like, if I'm threatened, I will fight. But otherwise, I'm kind of doing my own thing, trying to survive or trying to explore, as the case may be.
Right. I mean, and for someone who's trying to survive, who's either in a situation where, they're trying not to die, they're they're lost in the wilderness or whatever, they're just trying to scrape by and survive until they either get rescued or find a way out. Like, they're not going to take unnecessary risks when it comes to combat. They're not going to go out and just be shooting wolves. They're not going to go, if there are like bandits or some sort of AI, well, they wouldn't be AI in this case, but whatever, or some sort of enemy out there, like you're not going to go seeking that out, right? Because you're trying not to die. So why would you put yourself in that sort of position?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important component for people to remember when it comes to combat, is that it isn't, depending on the severity or survival situation, it isn't the kind of thing that you seek out. Like, this isn't Duke Nukem, this isn't a first-person shooter, this isn't, a PvP arena, and in games like DayZ, it could be a bigger aspect, but in a lot of games, it's really just, it's something you're doing that's a mechanic, and it's not built around you just running around running gunning. It's a really good way to lose your gear. It's a really good way to call others, whether they be AI or players, to your location. And it's a really good way to lose your save game in the case of like, King of the Jungle mode, Green Hell, or the just flat out permadeath of TLD. Like you have to weigh the pros and cons. If you're already nursing broken rib, like now is not the time to take a pot shot at the wolf. I mean, unless you want to end your game, in which case, like, go for it. But
Yeah, if you feel like you got nothing else to lose, why not?
yeah, I think at the end of the day, the ending kind of question for the topic will be: is that kind of combat slash engagement slash weapon based, like violence or engagement, is that even necessary for the game to be survival? Like, can it be something that's more about, I don't want to say stealth, because I feel like if you say stealth, people are thinking like Assassin's Creed. Like you
Metal Gear
crouch,
Solid. Yeah.
yeah, like you're hiding behind things. You're like, I'm in this blade of grass, and now the sentry can't see me. La 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 la. Like, Not talking about that. I'm just talking about, you're going forward, you're listening for noises, your eyes ahead, you're scanning all over, and in the distance you see a wolf, or you kill something and you're quickly pocketing some meat before you head away. You see a whole bunch of zombies shuffling down in one courtyard, so you go the opposite direction. Like, is this kind of first person role play, almost kind of realism, like avoiding the conflict? Can that still be like a good portion of a survival game? Or do people feel like they need to be more of that, like, I'm shooting shit, I'm winning the game, like I am quote unquote surviving because I'm shooting the shit first? Like, is that a necessary tool?
I don't think it is. And this is coming from, the person who loves combat. I don't think, obviously, if your game is built around combat being important, then yes, it will need it, because then if you try to steer away from that, then the balance is all messed up. And yeah, so obviously, if your game is built more around the idea that combat is integral, or at least, a major part of it, then yes, obviously. But you can, I think, very easily have a survival game where you are not encouraged to be in combat, and you're encouraged to play more subtly, more quietly, to avoid the combat, to avoid these aggressive creatures, and to just stay away from any sort of physical conflict that can mess you up, get you injured, get you killed, cause you to have to leave things behind because, you've lost it in the attack, or it's any number of reasons that you would want to avoid this. And I think that if we get into the kind of survival game that you want to play specifically, Jordan, then I think that I don't think that you need the combat at all. I think it would probably lean more towards this sort of more stealthy approach that you're describing. But I would much rather play the game that lets me shoot things.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It's just like, how much fighting is necessary. There will always be games that need it. Like 7 Days to Die is not like every 7 days the horde will come. Here's a stick and a rock. Go fuck yourself.
You better
Like,
hide. No, they expect you to fight, right? And that's kind of what I mean. Like some games they expect it of you, and it's built into the whole purpose of the game. Whereas sort of like in DayZ or Scum, you kind of have the choice, right? I mean, you can, you'll see that pack of zombies down the road, and you can choose to fight through them if you really want, or you can choose to go around them, whether that's to avoid fighting the zombies themselves or drawing attention to yourself. You can kind of pick and choose. Um, and there's pros and cons to both options. Um, but like I don't think a survival game needs combat.
I think it needs to just be. I think all the different ways they're going to do it need to be fleshed out. Like, I'm a huge fan of the way they do it in Long Dark. Like, yeah, you can engage them, you can scare the wolves away with fire. You can try to hide indoors, sleep to spend time. Like, it. It has that, again, that super realistic aspect. Like, if I was alone trudging through the woods, I wouldn't be taking pot shots at bears. I wouldn't be taking pot shots at wolves. I wouldn't be taking pot shots at like a moose unless I was maybe inside a house, like shooting through windows, someplace where I was really safe. And the types of injuries in some of these games also can really make it more of an issue. You get a lot of in Scum, you get those bleed, like the bleed bandit or the bleed wounds or whatever, where you're just taking your life away and you have 5 or 6 of them and you're like, well, got no cloth, so
guess I'm dead.
fuck my life. And I don't know if you saw, but they actually had tweeted about some changes upcoming for now doing bacterial infections.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought that those
And
were coming. I assumed that those were on their way eventually.
yep, bacterial infections, open wounds, getting sepsis.
Oh no.
Um, yep, doing like the size of the wound being related to like how much basically like microorganisms come in.
Woof.
Having the wound being like if your clothes are dirty and you take an injury, having it more likely that it will get affected as opposed to if your clothes are clean. Just a whole bunch of minutia.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good to know.
Rip your character every 3 minutes. Just
Better start holding
preemptively.
on to those antibiotics.
Well, remember you used to have to, and I haven't played Daisy in a while now, to like disinfect things.
Oh yeah.
Not that it worked for sickness ever, but
Yeah.
I think I was gonna say I think that those things are pretty interesting. Just that level of depth. You know, the more they can do. If you want to do the combat, I'm fine with it. I just think it would be neat if you add in more depth to it. Having the weapons jam, having them misfire, you know, having them maybe get broken, having them draw other things to you. Maybe it's not just the noise, maybe it's the scent, maybe the scent of the gunpowder, maybe the spell. You know, having it injure certain animals and having them come at you and having it injure certain zombies or the way they injure zombies. Or again, the zombies come and kick your ass. I'm very much a fan of like things coming and kicking your ass if you shoot them.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. You can't just sort of be shooting your gun off and have no sort of consequences for it.
Yeah. You need to not be McCree. You're not like one shot killing everything. And I think that's an important distinction that people get very into like, well, I have a gun, so now everything is one shot kill. So nothing should bother me because I'm just one shot killing it. And then because the combat decreases a lot of the risk, and then a lot of other things like, you know, you can give someone a gun in say a typical zombie game, and if you make it that ammo is plentiful and you make it that you can one shot everything, you can change the structure of the game. Maybe before they didn't go into herds of zombies, maybe there was a certain harder type of zombie in a special area that they didn't try to go to unless they had people with them at certain times of day, or maybe they didn't go out at night because it was more dangerous and they couldn't see. And now you give them this invincibility, and now you've invalidated sections of the game. Like it's completely unnecessary. You know, how many times do we get guns in our games and then we're just like, fuck you, zombies. Now we're coming out during the day. No
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to having to be balanced, is what it is, really. If you're gonna add or have guns in your game, you have to sort of balance around them or with them in mind. Um, it might be difficult to program this. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure either way it would be some work, but maybe like, okay, once guns are unlocked or once you finally get a gun, maybe the enemies or the combat has to evolve in some way. Like maybe now there's a zombie that is more immune to bullets or, just doesn't stop when you shoot them, just kind of keeps coming, or something of that sort. Um, like anything, it's all about the balance and not invalidating the rest of the game.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those, like, even though we spent a lot of this episode on the guns, it really is the part where if the game has guns, which most of them do, you know, that's why it's a topic worthy of a lot of discussion. When it doesn't have guns, then what you end up being for your primary, like, end kind of weapon usually ends up being the bow. Or if you're more of a melee style fighter, it might be if they allow you to create something like a katana or some kind of like special knife. But typically, a lot of these games where you aren't getting a gun, you're getting a bow. And it's really like there's not as much complexity into it for some of the games because it's really just, you know, how much damage is it going to do versus the hit pool. Is the animal going to bleed out or is the enemy ever going to bleed out? You have different types of arrows. And then that whole, like some games, it's just very much where my crosshairs is. That's where the arrow goes. Some of them have drop, you know, so you have to aim a little bit above or a lot above, and you're trying to work out basically the distance and the trajectory, and it becomes more of like an intuitive slash mathematical thing. But I think for these games where they keep it real, keep it basic, those are the ones I tend to prefer. You know, I spend a lot more time in Green Hell, Long Dark, and Stranded Deep, where it keeps me, I don't want to say on an equal footing with anything I have to fight, but it makes it that at least there's going to be some struggle. Like, I don't know if I'm going to survive that encounter. Because when I have a gun or a
Right.
rifle, I'm probably going to. Probably.
Yeah, it's a lot more balanced when you don't have guns and you're just sort of you're building up to better melee weapons, and yeah, they give you like a better chance. Okay, you finally got the steel axe, so maybe now you can hit a zombie and you get it in the head and it dies in one hit. Um, but you are still, sort of you are still forced into melee. You can't take out sort of like entire groups by just holding down the trigger of a gun. And there is still that sense of danger, like you said. There's still not any certainty that you will survive that encounter, especially if there's multiple enemies coming at you at once, or if you aren't prepared, you're taken off guard, any number of reasons. I think it is a lot easier to balance around the idea of a survival game and about surviving against the odds and sort of scraping by. It's a lot easier to balance those ideas around weapons that are not automatic guns.
And I think it even plays into just like what you're trying to do with the game. It doesn't make sense to put them into, depending on the complexity of the weapons, it doesn't make sense depending on what you're having them do. The Long Dark was really about like this barren place, it's empty, everyone's gone, you're not really running into people. And so you don't need to be carrying, like you might find a revolver, you might find a bow, or you might find a hunting rifle, but you don't need a fucking arsenal of shit. Like, it's not that kind of game. It's about the solitude. It's, all these feelings it brings up, and it is not something that needed all this extra crap. And for a lot of these games coming up, some of them are really leaning more into just the feelings the game's going to invoke and just the atmosphere and everything that plays in together, and trying to make it less about, I think, moving away almost from that whole like survival. It's just like, it's something trying to kill me, that I'm trying to stay alive from it, from this specific thing trying to kill me. Aside from the ones that are more of like the pack zombie slash horde night kind of thing, Night of the Dead, 7 Days to Die, Survive the Night, that's very clearly going to be some kind of weaponry involved in that. I can't imagine that they'd be like, by the way, although who knows,
Right.
maybe tomorrow there'll be a game that's like hordes of 500 zombies and all you get is a butter knife.
Maybe I'll try that game.
You would try that. I would not try that game. I'll watch you try that game.
Fair enough.
I'd be in the like, here you go, Dave. You can have my butter knife too. You can dual butter
Dual
knives.
wield butter knives. Let's go.
I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think the more of them that come out, there are certain aspects of it where I think it can move what the game plays and what it feels like. I think it can move the pendulum, right? Too few survival elements. And actually, it's not even a left to right pendulum. It almost swings it like if survival, like pure survival, that knife's edge, you're like a person. I drop you out in the woods and you're trying to survive. And if you start to swing things in certain directions, you like start to shift the pendulum so it doesn't play like a survival. You're throwing that 7 Days to Die, that horde night every few days, and all these guns and everything. It's not hard to survive. It's not hard to quote unquote keep yourself alive outside of when you're just fighting this overblown, enemy, the horde of things that are spitting and exploding and whatever. And same thing in forest, kind of, you really tamp down, like, yeah, you're doing food and stuff, but there's really nothing except for the mutants. And I think what made it so tricky still, and I hate to really use tricky, but like, I think what made it not be kind of more of a just hold your finger down and, like in 7 Days to Die, is the fact that you didn't get the gun. Again, you could go pick up the pieces of the gun, but like, you had to use the bow and arrow.
Mm-hmm.
You had to use these close combat melee things where they could also be beating on your creepy eye armor shit.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a really neat thing to think about, that, as each, getting kind of off combat, but like as each thing changes.
Yeah. How it all comes together, including the combat.
Including the combat. And I think we might see games, I've seen a bunch coming up where they move away from that kind of strife and they're moving more into like puzzles. Like a lot of puzzle games, a lot of just like management. You see it a lot with the ones that are like the atypical kind of survival builders, maybe like Frostpunk, Endzone. You're really doing it less about certain types of gameplay. Certain types of mechanics are making it in there, certain types aren't. And I think it can kind of twist things around. Like if you
For sure.
dropped all the guns into TLD, it would ruin it. If you
Absolutely. Yeah.
dropped, if you dropped them into Green Hill, it wouldn't ruin it because of balance. It would ruin it because it would just feel weird. Like there's no contest if you have guns and the other people are running at you with bows and arrows and spears.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you gave them guns, that would be equally weird.
It would. It would. I would have fun with that though, I think.
Green Hill, Arena Brawl, last one standing.
Green Hell Deathmatch Edition.
Go throw it into Google. There's probably a mod. Like
I wouldn't be surprised.
I feel like there's a mod for everything at this point. All right, friends, it is that time to end the combative nature of this podcast. We would like to thank our patrons, Rinby, Mitzi, Foxy, Static, and Matt.
And Matt.
And Matt. And we'd like to encourage folks to follow the link on the show notes to the website. The website will link on to the curator page, to the Discord, to the directory, to basically everything that you would ever need. And even, like I said, to the Discord where you can, I don't know, view an endless parade of cat pictures.
Yep. Most of them will be my cat.
Yep. She has one cat to my 8, but
and I take like 100 times the pictures.
Yep. I can't chase them all over the house and take pictures. It's too exhausting. So we will catch you guys next week and be well.
Bye.